Imagine being born into a world where survival isn't a question of if you'll face death. It's a question of when. 1 million years ago, high in the cliffs of what we now call East Africa, a single egg rocked gently in a nest made of bones and dried grass. Inside that fragile shell was Kaya, a creature that would never know her mother's warmth, never hear her father's call. Because in the world of the Haast's eagle, the largest, most powerful raptor ever to rule the skies, only the strongest survived the first day. This nest sat 300 feet above a valley crawling with saber-toothed cats, dire wolves and terror birds that could snap a human spine like kindling. But the greatest danger didn't prowl below. It circled above. Rival eagles, starvation and storms that could tear a fledgling from its perch and dash it against the rocks. Kaya's story isn't just about one eagle's fight to survive. It's about the brutal mathematics of nature. Where love doesn't exist, mercy is a myth, and every sunrise is earned in blood. If you want to witness the most primal battle for existence ever told, subscribe now and stay until the end. This is life when the world belonged to the giants of the sky. Kaya's beak cracked through the eggshell after 3 days of exhausting labor. The world that greeted her was cold, harsh, and immediately hostile. The nest, 6 feet across, built from the femurs of ancient gazelles, the ribs of extinct primates, and branches torn from trees that no longer existed, sat on a limestone ledge so narrow that one wrong step meant a 300-foot plunge to certain death. She was not alone. Her brother had hatched 2 days earlier. He was larger, stronger, his eyes already focused while hers still struggled to make sense of shapes and shadows. In the world of the Haast's eagle, those 2 days might as well have been 2 years. He had already received the first feedings, already bonded with their mother's massive form, already established himself as the primary heir to this kingdom of bone and sky. Their mother, Skara, was magnificent, a living weapon sculpted by 1,000,000 years of evolution. Her wingspan stretched 12 feet. Her talons were the length of human fingers, curved and sharp enough to punch through skulls. She weighed 35 pounds of pure predatory efficiency, making her the largest eagle ever to exist. Her mate, the smaller male called Taran, was away hunting, his silhouette visible as a dark speck against the morning sun. Kaya's first sensation was hunger, a gnawing, desperate emptiness that consumed her tiny body. She opened her beak and made a sound, a pathetic chirp that barely carried over the wind howling through the cliff face. Her brother, already twice her size, heard her weakness and responded not with sibling affection, but with evolutionary brutality. He lunged at her, his beak striking her head, his talons raking her soft, wet feathers. The message was clear. There was barely enough food for 1 chick. 2 was unsustainable. 1 of them had to die, and nature had already chosen the winner. Skara watched this display with cold, calculating eyes. She didn't intervene. In her world, intervention meant wasting resources on inferior offspring. If Kaya couldn't defend herself in the nest, she would never survive in the sky. Better to let her die now, quickly, than waste precious meat keeping a weakling alive. But Kaya had something her brother didn't expect. Desperation amplified by instinct so ancient it predated conscious thought. When he lunged again, she didn't retreat. Instead, she pushed back, her tiny body pressing into his, her beak finding his eye and pecking with surprising force. Her brother shrieked and pulled away, blood trickling from near his eye. It wasn't a victory, not really, but it was a message. I will not die easily. Skara's head tilted, her piercing gaze reassessing the smaller chick. Then she did something unusual. She regurgitated a piece of meat, partially digested flesh from yesterday's kill, and dropped it not to the larger male chick, but to Kaya. It was a reprieve, not mercy. A test, not love. If Kaya could hold her own against her brother, perhaps she was worth the investment of food. Perhaps she carried genes strong enough to pass forward. Kaya tore into the meat with savage hunger, swallowing chunks so large they bulged in her throat. Her brother watched, seething, but didn't attack again. The wound near his eye throbbed, teaching him a lesson. Size wasn't everything. Sometimes the desperate ones fought harder than the strong ones. The day passed in cycles of cold wind, harsh sun, and the constant gnawing hunger that never truly went away. Taran returned at dusk, carrying a rock hyrax, a small mammal that looked like a guinea pig but tasted like survival. He dropped it in the nest, and immediately the siblings fought for position. Kaya learned quickly, fighting wasn't about strength alone. It was about timing, about using her brother's momentum against him, about knowing when to push and when to yield. She didn't win every confrontation, but she won enough to stay alive, and in this nest, staying alive was the only victory that mattered. As darkness fell and the temperature plummeted, Skara spread her massive wings over both chicks, creating a shelter against the cold. Kaya pressed against her brother's larger body, sharing warmth despite their hatred, because survival demanded cooperation even between enemies. That night, Kaya dreamed, if young eagles dreamed, of flying, of hunting, of the freedom beyond the nest. But her dreams were interrupted by a sound that made even Skara's body tense with alarm. Scraping. Something was climbing the cliff face toward their nest. Something large. Something hungry. Something that knew exactly where the eagle's nest was located, and it was getting closer. The scraping sound grew louder, accompanied by the soft thud of something heavy finding purchase on the limestone. Skara's body went rigid, her wings spreading protectively over both chicks, her head swiveling toward the cliff edge just 10 feet from the nest. Kaya felt her mother's heartbeat accelerate through the contact of their bodies, a drumbeat of alarm that triggered every survival instinct coded into her DNA. Her brother pressed closer, his earlier aggression forgotten in the face of a threat neither of them understood yet. Then it appeared. A massive paw, easily the size of Skara's body, reached over the cliff edge, claws curved, retractable, designed for gripping rock and tearing flesh dug into the stone. The creature pulled itself up with terrifying strength, revealing a head that made Kaya's tiny heart freeze. Dinophalis, the false saber-toothed cat. 8 feet long, 400 pounds of muscle and predatory intelligence, with fangs that protruded from its upper jaw like ivory daggers. Unlike true saber-tooths, this species had evolved shorter, stronger teeth, perfect for crushing bones and severing spines. And unlike most big cats, Dinophalis could climb with the agility of a leopard despite its massive size. The cat's eyes locked onto the nest, onto the fresh meat Terran had brought earlier, onto the 2 helpless chicks that represented easy calories. It had been tracking this nest for weeks, waiting for the eggs to hatch, waiting for the moment when adult eagles would be distracted by feeding young. Skara didn't hesitate. She launched herself at the cat with a shriek that echoed across the valley, a sound of pure maternal fury that transcended species. Her talons extended forward, her wings beating with explosive power in the confined space of the ledge. She struck the Dinophalis in the face, her talons raking across its eyes, drawing blood, forcing it to rear back. But the ledge was narrow, barely wide enough for the cat to stand, and Skara's attack left her vulnerable, off balance, her wings too large for close combat. The cat's paw swung in a blur of motion, catching Skara's wing and slamming her against the cliff wall. Kaya heard bones crack, a sound that would haunt her if eagles could remember trauma. From the valley below, drawn by the scent of blood and the commotion, came sounds that made Skara's remaining strength drain away in defeated recognition. Hyenas, not the laughing scavengers of the modern era, but Pachikrakuta, the bone-crushing giants, intelligent pack hunters that stood 4 feet at the shoulder and feared nothing. And they were climbing toward the nest, following the same path the Dinophalis had taken, drawn by the promise of fresh meat and helpless prey, trapped on a ledge with nowhere to run. The hyena's approach was methodical, patient. Unlike the impulsive Dinophalis, these creatures understood strategy. 3 of them, a matriarch and 2 younger females, worked together, one climbing while the others waited below, ready to catch anything that fell. They had learned over countless generations that cliff nests offered easy meals if you were willing to work for them. Skara knew she was dying. Blood loss, internal trauma, the broken wing, any one of these injuries would have been survivable with time and rest. All 3 together spelled death, and she could feel it creeping through her body with each labored breath, but she had perhaps 20 minutes before the hyenas reached the ledge. 20 minutes to make a choice that would determine which of her offspring survived. She looked at her 2 chicks, with eyes that were already beginning to glaze. The male was larger, stronger, more aggressive. He had a better chance of surviving if she could somehow drive off the hyenas, if some miracle provided food and water. He was the logical choice, the one evolution would favor. But Kaya had fought back when attacked. Kaya had used intelligence, not just size, and in a world changing faster than most species could adapt, intelligence might matter more than strength. Skara made her decision. With her last reserves of strength, she lunged at the male chick, not to protect him but to attack him. Her beak struck his body with devastating force, driving him backward toward the edge of the nest, toward the 300-foot drop beyond. Kaya watched in horror as her mother, the creature who had sheltered them, fed them, protected them, suddenly turned into an executioner. The male chick screamed, his wings flapping uselessly, too underdeveloped to provide any lift, as he tumbled backward over the edge. His cries faded rapidly as he fell, ending abruptly when he struck the same rocks that had killed Taran and the Dinophilis. Skara collapsed, her final act of motherhood complete. She had made the cold calculation that one chick had a better chance than two. She had chosen Kaya, for reasons even she couldn't fully understand. Instinct, perhaps, or some dim recognition that adaptability trumped raw power in the long run. But as her eyes closed for the last time, Skara realized with fading consciousness that her choice might have been pointless. The hyenas were still coming, and one tiny, newly hatched chick against 3 bone-crushing predators was no contest at all. Kaya stood alone in the nest of bones, her mother's body still warm beside her, her brother's final screams echoing in her primitive awareness. She was perhaps 12 hours old, barely able to stand, her feathers still wet and useless, her eyes barely able to focus beyond a few feet. The first hyena's head appeared over the cliff edge. It was massive, larger than Skara had been, with jaws designed to crack elephant bones. Its eyes found Kaya immediately, and it made a sound that was half laugh, half growl, a sound that communicated satisfaction at finding prey exactly where it expected. Kaya should have frozen. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to stay still, to play dead, to hope the predator lost interest. But something in her, that same desperate defiance that had made her fight her brother, that had caught Skara's attention, refused to surrender. She opened her beak and screamed. Not a chirp, not a call for help that would never come. A scream of pure primal defiance, the sound of a creature that would not go quietly into death. The hyena paused, surprised. Prey didn't usually challenge. Prey ran or froze or submitted. This tiny ball of wet feathers was doing none of those things. Then the hyena's lips pulled back in what might have been amusement, revealing teeth that could shear through Kaya's body in a single bite, and it hauled itself fully onto the ledge, blocking any escape route. Behind it, 2 more hyena heads appeared. Kaya was trapped on a narrow ledge with nowhere to run, no weapons, no help, and 3 predators that had every advantage. The mathematics of survival said she should die in the next 30 seconds. But mathematics didn't account for one thing: the storm gathering on the horizon, moving fast, bringing with it winds that could rip eagles from the sky, or hyenas from cliff ledges, and it was moving directly toward them. The wind hit first, a wall of air so violent it made the nest shake, scattering bones and dried grass over the cliff edge. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds, and the sky turned from blue to bruised purple as the storm rolled across the valley like a living thing. The lead hyena had just placed her massive paw in the nest when the first gust struck. Her body swayed, her claws scrambling for purchase on the narrow ledge. For a creature that weighed 300 pounds, balance on a 6-inch wide strip of limestone suddenly became a life-or-death calculation. Kaya felt the wind lift her tiny body, threatening to tear her from the nest entirely. Instinct drove her to grab the nearest solid thing, her mother's leg, still warm, still substantial. She clung to Skara's body as the storm intensified. As rain began to fall in sheets so thick, the valley below disappeared entirely. The hyena matriarch made her choice: advance into the nest or retreat to safer ground. She lunged forward, her jaws opening to snap up the chick and whatever meat remained, planning to carry her prize back down before the storm made the cliff impassable. But nature had other plans. Lightning struck the cliff face 50 feet above the nest, and the thunder that followed wasn't just sound. It was a physical force that shook loose rocks that had clung to the limestone for thousands of years. One boulder, the size of a buffalo's head, tumbled down and struck the ledge just behind the hyena matriarch. The stone didn't hit her directly, but it struck with enough force to crack the already weathered ledge. fracture lines spiderwebbed through the limestone. And suddenly the rock beneath the hyena's hind legs simply ceased to exist. She scrambled, her front claws digging into the nest itself, her massive jaws snapping at anything that might provide purchase. For one terrible moment she hung there, half in the nest, half dangling over 300 feet of nothing, her weight pulling at the structure of bones and branches that generations of eagles had built. The nest began to disintegrate. Bones tumbled over the edge, followed by branches, followed by the grass that had provided insulation. Kaya clung to her mother's body as everything around them fell away, the nest collapsing under the weight of the hyena and the violence of the storm. The matriarch's claws found Skara's body, and for a horrible second, Kaya felt herself being dragged toward the edge, still attached to her mother, still refusing to let go. The hyena's eyes met hers, alien, calculating, showing no malice but no mercy either, just the cold mathematics of survival. Then the ledge gave way completely. The hyena fell, her bulk taking most of the nest's structure with her, her scream mixing with the thunder and the roar of the wind. But in her death grip on Skara's body, she had created a pivot point. The eagle's corpse, wedged between the cliff face and the last remaining support beam of the nest, acted as an anchor, and Kaya, still gripping her mother's leg, found herself suspended in space, the storm raging around her, the valley floor invisible through the rain far below. The two younger hyenas on the cliff path below watched their matriarch fall, watched her body tumble through the storm, watched her strike the rocks with an impact that would have been audible if not for the thunder. They looked at each other, then at the destroyed nest barely clinging to the cliff face, and made the only rational decision. Kaya opened her beak and answered with every bit of strength she had left, a desperate cry that said, "I am here. I am alive. I need help." The question was, would the eagle view her as offspring to be adopted, or simply as competition to be eliminated? The circling eagle descended in a lazy spiral, her movements efficient and calculating. She was older than Skara had been, evident in the scars across her breast, the slight raggedness of her wing feathers, the wariness in her approach. This was Zara, a female who had raised 3 successful broods and lost twice that many to the merciless mathematics of nature. She landed on a rock outcropping 20 feet above the destroyed nest, her talons gripping the stone with casual strength. Her eyes, sharp, ancient, unblinking, studied Kaya with the detachment of a creature that had seen 1,000 deaths and caused half of them. Kaya screamed again, louder this time, her hunger and desperation giving her voice a raw edge that cut through the morning air. She was still clinging to Skara's body, still perched on the remnants of the nest, still trapped on a ledge with no escape route for a chick too young to fly. Zara tilted her head, processing. The destroyed nest told a story. Storm damage, predator attack, parental death. The surviving chick represented a puzzle. Most birds would simply fly away. A strange chick in a destroyed nest was nature's problem, not hers. But Zara had lost her own brood just 3 weeks earlier to a snake that had infiltrated her nest while she hunted. Her body still produced crop milk, that protein-rich secretion that eagles fed to newborn chicks. Her hormones still screamed at her to nurture, to feed, to protect. She dropped to the ledge where Kaya huddled, and the small chick's scream died in her throat. This close, Zara was terrifying, twice Skara's size, her beak designed to shear flesh from bone, her talons capable of punching through a monkey's skull like it was made of paper. Zara's beak opened, and Kaya braced for death. Instead, regurgitated meat splattered onto the ledge beside her, partially digested antelope, still warm, nutritious beyond measure. Kaya didn't question. She lunged at the food with savage desperation, swallowing chunks that were too large for her throat, choking them down anyway, knowing this might be her only meal. Her body was shutting down from starvation, from dehydration, from exposure. This food was the difference between living another day and dying within the hour. Zara watched the chick feed with an expression that might have been satisfaction or might have been simple biological programming. Then she did something extraordinary. She reached down with her beak and gently grasped Kaya by the scruff of her neck, the same way she would carry her own offspring. The world dropped away as Zara lifted Kaya from the destroyed nest, carrying her into the sky. Kaya had never flown, had never even been off the nest, and the sensation was overwhelming. The wind rushed past, the ground fell away to impossible distances, and she could see the entire valley spread below like a map of green and brown and blue. She could see the bodies at the cliff base, her father, her brother, the Dinophilis, the hyena matriarch, all of them reduced to dark shapes being picked apart by vultures and jackals. This was the world from above. This was what it meant to be an eagle. Zara flew for 20 minutes, carrying Kaya across ridges and canyons to a cliff face on the opposite side of the valley. Here, nestled in an alcove protected from wind and rain, was her nest. Larger than Skara's had been, built over years, reinforced with the bones of 100 kills. She deposited Kaya into the nest and immediately adopted her. Not through love or compassion, those concepts didn't exist in her world, but through biological programming that said, I have milk, I have a nest, I have the resources to raise offspring, and here is offspring that needs raising. The equation balanced. Nature was satisfied. But Kaya's survival had one more test to pass, and it arrived that very afternoon in the form of a sound that made even Zara's body tense with primal fear. A roar. Not from a cat, not from a hyena, but from something far worse. An Arctodus, the short-faced bear, 13 feet tall when standing, 2,000 pounds of muscle and claws and appetite, the largest terrestrial predator to walk the African continent in 1,000,000 years. And it was climbing toward Zara's nest, drawn by the scent of stored meat and fresh chick. These bears could climb, they could swim, they could outrun horses and fight off packs of dire wolves. They had no natural predators, and they were absolutely relentless. Zara shrieked a warning and took flight, circling above, preparing to defend her nest the way she'd defended every nest before. But Kaya, watching from the safety of the alcove, understood something with a clarity beyond her days. The bear would reach the nest. The bear would kill Zara if she got too close. The bear would eat Kaya, regardless of how bravely her adopted mother fought. Unless something changed, unless someone thought of something new. And in that moment, Kaya's eyes fell on the nest structure, on the massive support beams holding thousands of pounds of bone and wood and accumulated kills, all of it balanced on a ledge barely wide enough to contain it. If those beams broke, the entire nest would fall, taking with it anything standing on or near it. Kaya looked at the approaching bear, then at the support beams, then at her own tiny, useless body. She was 3 days old. She couldn't fly, couldn't hunt, could barely stand without wobbling. But she could push. The Arctodus climbed with terrifying efficiency, its massive claws finding purchase in cracks that seemed too small to support its weight. Each movement was deliberate, patient, the confidence of an apex predator that had never known defeat. Zara dove at its head repeatedly, her talons raking bloody furrows across its face, but the bear simply turned its head away and continued climbing, unbothered by wounds that would have killed lesser creatures. Kaya stood at the edge of the massive nest, her body trembling not from fear but from calculation. The support beams, ancient branches as thick as her body, were wedged into natural crevices in the rock face. Generations of eagles had built upon this foundation, adding layer after layer until the nest weighed hundreds of pounds. It was secure, stable, designed to withstand storms and time. But stability was also fragility. The entire structure balanced on 3 main support points. Remove one, and the physics changed dramatically. The bear's head appeared over the ledge, and Kaya got her first full view of the monster. Its face was a nightmare landscape of scars and muscle, its teeth yellow and worn from cracking bones, its breath carrying the stench of rotting meat and death. One paw reached into the nest, claws extended, searching for the chick it could smell but not quite see behind the wall of accumulated bones. Kaya didn't run. Instead, she moved toward the rear of the nest, toward the main support beam that anchored the entire structure. It was wedged into a crack, held in place by weight and friction, and decades of accumulated debris. She pressed her tiny body against the beam and pushed. Nothing happened. She was 3 days old, weighing less than a pound. The beam weighed more than she would weigh in her entire adult life. The bear hauled itself fully onto the ledge, its bulk making the entire cliff face seem to shrink. Zara screamed and dove again, striking the bear's eyes, trying desperately to blind it, to drive it away. The bear swatted at her with casual brutality, and one blow connected with Zara's wing, sending the adult eagle tumbling through the air. She recovered, her wing injured but not broken, circling frantically, knowing her adopted chick had seconds before those jaws closed around its fragile body. Kaya pushed again, channeling every ounce of strength her starving body possessed. She wasn't trying to move the beam itself. She was trying to dislodge the rocks and debris that held it in place. Small pebbles began to shift, then larger stones, a cascade effect starting from her desperate effort. The bear's head swung toward her, finally locating the source of movement. It lunged forward, jaws opening, close enough that Kaya could see. Down its throat, could see the remnants of its last meal still clinging to its teeth. The support beam shifted 6 inches. The entire nest lurched sideways, throwing the bear off balance. Its claws scrambled for purchase, finding only bones and branches that collapsed under its weight. The bear's eyes, showing emotion for the first time, showing something that might have been surprise or fear, locked onto Kaya as the mathematics of physics overtook the certainty of predation. The nest collapsed. Hundreds of pounds of accumulated material, bones, branches, stored meat, rocks and debris tumbled over the ledge in a catastrophic avalanche. The bear, caught in the middle of this cascade, had no chance to retreat. Its massive body flipped backward, claws raking at empty air, a roar of fury and confusion echoing across the valley. It fell 300 feet, the same distance Kaya's brother had fallen, the same distance the Dinophilis and the hyena matriarch had fallen. The impact when it struck was like thunder, and the birds for miles around took flight in panic. But Kaya was falling too. She had been standing on the nest when it collapsed, and now she tumbled through empty space, surrounded by bones and branches, the ground rushing up to meet her with absolute finality. Her wings, useless, underdeveloped, designed for flight, weeks in the future, flapped instinctively but provided no lift, no control, nothing but the false hope that biology could override physics. She spun through the air, seeing flashes of Sky Cliff Valley, death approaching at terminal velocity. Then Zara was there, the adult eagle, diving at speeds that would have torn lesser birds apart, matched Kaya's fall and grasped the chick in, her talons with precision that spoke of 1,000 successful hunts. She pulled up hard, her injured wings screaming in protest, her flight muscles tearing from the strain of changing trajectory while carrying even a tiny additional weight. They cleared the ground by less than 10 feet. Zara spiraled upward, laboring. With each wing beat, Kaya clutched safely in her grasp. She flew to a different cliff face, to a narrow ledge with no nest but enough space to land, and deposited Kaya there with a gentleness that seemed impossible given what they'd just survived. For a long moment, eagle and chick simply breathed, their hearts hammering, their bodies processing the reality that they were alive when they should have been dead. Below, the bear's body lay motionless, surrounded by the scattered remains of the nest that had been Kaya's second home. Scavengers were already approaching, hyenas, jackals, vultures, all of them eager to feast on the apex predator that had been killed by a 3-day-old chick and the laws of physics. Zara examined her injured wing, testing its range of motion. It would heal given time. She turned to Kaya and regurgitated more food, less this time, as if understanding that resources were now limited, and Kaya ate mechanically, her tiny brain trying to process what she'd just done. She had survived not through strength, not through speed, not through any of the attributes evolution typically rewarded. She had survived through understanding cause and effect, through seeing possibility where instinct saw only death, through being willing to sacrifice safety for action. Over the next weeks, Zara would teach Kaya to hunt, to fly, to navigate the brutal world of 1 million years ago. The lessons would be hard, the failures frequent, the pain constant. But Kaya would survive each challenge, carrying with her the memory of that 300-foot fall, the moment she had bet everything on a desperate plan and won. 60 days later, on a morning painted gold by the rising sun, Kaya would stand on the edge of a cliff and spread wings that had finally grown large enough, strong enough, ready enough, She would jump into empty space one last time, but this time, her wings would catch the air. And she would fly. This is the truth of survival. It's not about being the biggest, the fastest, or the strongest. It's about adaptation, about seeing solutions where others see only problems, about being willing to sacrifice everything for one chance at tomorrow. Kaya's story, played out on cliffs 1,000,000 years ago, reminds us that intelligence and desperation can sometimes accomplish what raw power never could. Nature doesn't care about fairness. It doesn't reward the deserving or punish the wicked. It only cares about one thing: who survives long enough to pass their genes forward. And sometimes, against all odds, it's the smallest, the weakest, the most desperate who figures out how to do exactly that. What would you have done in Kaya's place? Would you have had the courage to push that beam knowing it meant falling yourself? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if this journey through prehistoric skies moved you, hit that subscribe button. Because the most powerful stories aren't about heroes, they're about survivors. And we're all descended from survivors who did impossible things. Until next time, remember, the view is always better from above.